All right, so now we're going to lay out the fabric and cut out our pieces. And to make it sort of easy to work with for this video, what I did was I measured out the length of my back pattern piece and I cut a piece of fabric that length so I can just work with that length. And then I cut a second piece of fabric that's the length of the sleeve so I can show you how to easily fold your fabric and cut your pieces out. If you're working at home and you have plenty of space, you don't have to cut off the piece for the front and back until you've laid it out, folded it, and cut it out, just so you can save as much fabric as possible. But I did get it pretty close. So let me just show you quickly my pieces. Here's what my pieces look like after, after we cut them out and they're taped together and ready to go. My sleeve, and here's my front and my back. Now, because we're going to be cutting both the front and back on the fold along the center front and the center back, we're going to fold our fabric like this. I'm folding in towards the center on each selvage edge. So both the salvages are in the center of the fabric. What you do is you measure from one selvage to the fold on one end, and then you compare it with the other side. And if the measurement is equal, that means you folded it over and it will still be on grain. I'm just going to go ahead and measure. I'm using the end of the colored area here as the edge of my selvage. That's 12 inches. And then I'm going to measure over here. And it's actually about 1/4 of an inch longer on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully slide back, roll it back on this side a little bit to get it so it's perfectly measured the same. Okay, now that's 12 inches. It's 12 inches there. Oh, wait a minute. All right, so now I know this is 12 inches. Okay, so I'm going to lay my back so that the center back is right along the fold, like this. And I'm going to use my I'll use my big pattern weights to hold it on the center, and then I'll use little pattern weights to hold it around the edges, around here. I'm going to lay out my front as well. I've already measured to make sure that I folded that side on grain. So that's going to fit like that. Now what I want to show you is, this is the size extra large, and you can see I just make it. But I will tell you that the 2 extra large would have fit on this fabric if the salvages weren't so wide. All right, so depending on the width of your fabric and the size you're working with, if you're working with a 3X to 5X and it does not fit directly across, what you're going to do is you're going to actually lay your fabric out like I did, except you're only going to fold one side over. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to fold it over the width of the front piece, because the front is a little bit wider than the back. So it will look exactly like this. The rest of your fabric will be laying flat. And then what you do is you lay out your sleeve on that flat part. So you would lay one next to your back like this, and then you'd have your front down here, and you would flip the sleeve over and you would cut out a second sleeve over here. So that's how you would lay your pieces out if they don't fit directly across. Okay, and if you have any questions about that, please post them below and I will answer you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the back, and then I'll go over to the other side and I'll cut the front out. And I'm just going to cut right along the edge of the pattern. Okay. All right, so that piece is cut out. I'm going to go around to the other side and cut out the front. I'm going to borrow these pattern weights. And I'm just going to cut this out. All right, so before I move the fabric, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put pins where the notches are on the sleeve. And actually I'm going to just pin them together for now. Okay, so that's my notches. And I'll just put a pin in here for the notch. All right. All right, so I'm just going to put these to the side for now. All right, now we're going to cut the sleeve out, and you can see I've laid my fabric out, and basically it's folded in half so that the selvage edges are matched. Okay, so that's how we know that that's laid out right. And I've cut a piece that's the length of my sleeve, just to make it easy. So now that I have that all nice and laid out, I'm just going to lay my sleeve on the fabric, and I'm going to want to make sure that this sleeve is laying on grain with my fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my ruler again, and the downloadable pattern doesn't have a grain line, but the edges of the paper are the grain line. So I'm going to measure from where I taped my pages together to the selvage, and I'll do where the color stops. So I've got almost 13 inches. I think what I'll do is I'll make it so it's an even 13 inches, like that. Okay. And I'm just going to put a pin up here at this end, pinning it to the fabric. Then I'm going to measure down here, and you can see it's a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide it until it's even with the 13 inches. And this is not moving because I have a pin there to hold it in place. So now I've got my 13 inches there as well. All right, so now I know the sleeve is laying on the fabric, straight on the grain with the grain of the fabric. So I'm going to check and make sure my layer under here is extending enough to cover the whole pattern, and it is. So I'm all ready to cut this out. All right, so down here, I didn't actually cut the bottom line off, so I'm just going to use my ruler along that edge to cut it, so it'll be nice and straight, like this. There we go. All right. And again, I'm just going to put pins where my notches are, so I'll remember what's front and back and where it is. All right, so now that I've got this cut out, it's time to put the pieces together. So I will join you at the serger.